Chill study date. Hey, can you make an update video on your XM8500 mic and the EQ you have for it? So first, thanks for the comment. Always appreciate the time. So yeah, this is the Behringer XM8500. Believe it's about like a $30 Canadian microphone. Very good value for what it is. I've been using it for the last 9 months or so. Before we go into updated thoughts, let's take a quick look at the setup. So I really like to use this with the Tascam DR10X recorder. The recorder plugs straight into the microphone. Very convenient setup. Just pop out the micro SD once you're done. Good to go. For monitoring too, I can just plug in my earphones straight into the recorder itself and I have live, no latency feedback. Monitoring. Last thing to point out is this thing. This is a wind foam cover screen pop filter that I bought off of Amazon for the Shure SM58, I believe. Fits onto the mic perfectly and is really good at getting rid of those pops. As you can hear right now, pop, 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 pop. Now, the caveat of using this windscreen foam is that you kind of lose a little bit of detail, a little bit of those higher frequencies, but it's not that drastic of a fall off, and I would much prefer that over the alternative of pops and just picking up random wind noises, breath, my nose. I have a very active nose. So there's not much to talk about. Convenience factor is still at an all-time high. Durability, I've dropped this mic a couple of times surprisingly, especially when I was moving apartments, and it still pretty much looks flawless and performs flawlessly as well. In terms of EQ, I'll show you shortly on screen, but please keep in mind that I'm not a professional audio engineer. I'm self-taught and it's just playing a lot of things by ear and what I've consumed on the internet. Next, I just want to touch on the sound. I haven't done a lot of comparisons or straight one-to-one testing against microphones that I've used in the past, so I'm kind of relying on just my memory here and the thoughts that I remember having when I was using other microphones. So I've used the Electro Voice RE20, the Shure SM7B, a few microphones from Fine, a Mayono microphone, and the Neumann TLM103. Oh, and the Sennheiser MKH8050. Oh, and the V7, what is that? SE Electronics V7. Handheld dynamic. So a wide variety of microphones there, and a lot of them have different sound characteristics. When I think of the Shure SM7B, for example, and by all accounts, the Shure SM58 is pretty much the same thing from what I hear in terms of characteristics and coloration, it's characterized often as a very dark sounding microphone. To be honest, I don't 100% understand what people mean by dark sounding, but it does resonate. It makes sense when you hear it. If I was forced to come up with some sort of qualitative description of dark sounding, I'm thinking it's a little bit more heavy on the lower end, a little bit more suppressed in the high end. So depending on your voice, it could get into the territory of sounding a little bit muddy, a little bit muffled, not very clear. This microphone is kind of like that to my ears. Because if there's one thing lacking in the sound of this microphone, I think it is a bit of that clarity. It's a little bit weaker compared to something like the Neumann TLM103. Speaking of which, the Neumann TLM103, that is a condenser microphone. And most condenser microphones, I think, have a sound signature that I'm personally more drawn to. It sounds a little bit more organic, a little bit more real, and more well-rounded. So when I'm talking about how this microphone sounds a little bit lacking in the clarity and the detail, it's because that's my point of reference. A condenser microphone, the TLM103. If you think about highlights in video, it's like a very nice fall off and a nice roll off in the upper frequencies that makes it sound very clear, but still very pleasant, not so harsh on the ears. To me, this microphone sounds like it doesn't have that same clarity. However, it has this strange push in some upper frequencies. There's a little bit of a harshness, and maybe due to that, I think this microphone is a little bit more prone to sibilance, which is, again, those harsh sh sounds and the s sounds. Sometimes t's can be very pronounced and very piercing and doesn't sound very good. So when I'm using this microphone, I find monitoring to be crucial in case sibilance ever gets a little bit out of hand. If I hear it, I'm able to catch it and I can just re-record that line. So if I were to sum it up, not horrible. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't sound fantastic, but again, probably depends on your output device more than anything. And then I don't think the majority of people are going to notice. So wrapping up the sound, I think it sounds fine, all those characteristics, but would I ever replace it? If I had the funds, I would buy every single microphone out there and just play around with it and see what each excels at and so on and so forth. I just genuinely find it very fun and interesting. Although I do wish I could invest a little bit more time and patience and effort into learning about audio on the post-processing end as well as the capture end. And again, the issues that I have with the clarity of this microphone, or that false pseudo clarity of this microphone, that makes me want to explore other options eventually. But at the moment, I'm very happy with this microphone. And part of the reason I actually bought this microphone too was to kind of humble myself. I was going a little bit microphone crazy, and then I had to sit myself down and realize and come to terms with the fact that I'm not really using this for anything intensive very frequently. It's not like I'm podcasting anymore or regularly or full time. Even on the YouTube side of things, it's something that I'm approaching casually and on the side and out of enjoyment. So I don't really have the justification to keep around a very expensive mic collection. And I guess the last thing I want to touch on why I really like using this microphone is that it is a dynamic microphone. It is handheld. I can put it really close to my mouth and pretty much drown out most background noise. The self noise of the microphone in my use case doesn't bother me. It is a bit higher than other microphones that I've used in the past, especially condenser microphones, but it's not intrusive. And yeah, it's just really good at containing echoes, background noise, distracting noises, isolating my voice. I've used that at the peak of summer where I didn't want to record anything because it was so fucking hot. I left the AC blasting, I had a fan on in my room, and I did the virtual interview for my job that I'm working at right now. I trust that this microphone will get rid of most of that background noise and still produce a very good sound. I think that's it. If I do an EQ section, I'll see you shortly at the computer. The audio you're hearing right now is from the Sennheiser MKH8050 plugged into my audio interface into the computer and recording into Adobe Audition. So hopefully this provides another kind of comparison to the Behringer XM8500. The sound is going to be very different and it's going to pick up a lot more echo as well as background noise. However, I do think it still sounds very nice and it's very natural. It handles all those reflections inside very well. I have my desk right here in front of me and my computer monitors and so on and so forth. So typically when I'm working with anything audio related, I'm going to be using my Beyerdynamic DT1990 Pros. Very nice pair of headphones. I was in a small little den where there's no way I was going to fit in studio monitors into that room. So I did my research in terms of headphones and I landed upon these. I'm very happy with them so far. So I do use these with a plugin called Sound ID Reference 4, I believe is the name. Basically has all these sound profiles for a whole array of headphones and speakers to make them a little bit more accurate. For what it's worth, I'm also using these with the A pads. There's two sets of pads that come with these headphones and I'm using the ones that are apparently more technically accurate. Again, not an expert, I'm just kind of basing it off of what I've seen online. Apparently this is a really good setup to go with. So yeah, we're gonna EQ this thing together. First thing I like to do is turn on band 1 and just get rid of anything below 90 hertz. My understanding is that the human voice doesn't go below 90, so when I am processing spoken word, I'm just going to cut everything out below that, or at least roll it off. Typically those will be like hums, rumbles, things you just don't really need. This is where I do a lot of my boosting for the low end of a voice. I used to always boost this to 6, but I think over time I realized that's way too much. By nature of being so close to the microphones too, I typically already get a boost in bass when I'm recording, so I don't find that I need to add too much here. But I do like to beef it up a little bit, just to give it the extra bass, that body. So with this low end, I typically just raise it about 2. Next, I go kind of into this boxy region, so about 200 to 400, 500 range. A lot of stuff goes on here. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Because I don't really have well-treated rooms, I typically get a lot of messy frequencies here because it's bouncing everywhere and there's a lot of kind of bass buildup, especially in smaller spaces. This place right now is pretty large, so I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue, but echo is going to be. So I'm going to see if I can get rid of anything that I just don't like the sound of. So again, I'm going to do this by raising. Hey, Editor June here. EQing is quite boring to watch, I realize, but I also just want to show the actual process in real time. I wanted to provide a more concise explanation of what I'm doing as well. Basically what I do is I break it down according to different frequency ranges. Each range obviously has its own characteristics and affects different things. I take a note from each of these ranges and I boost it and just kind of sweep back and forth. When I'm doing this, I'm trying to listen for any frequencies that stand out, whether that be good or bad. I usually focus on anything that's distracting or jarring or just something that I don't like, and then I try reducing that to a level that doesn't sound awkward or strange. Because sometimes what happens is if you take it down too far, then it loses some body and it just doesn't sound very natural. On the other hand, if I find a frequency that I do like, then I'm going to try my best to boost that again in a natural way. Good. So I actually like what these two things are doing here. It sounds a little bit more rounded, if anything. So if I'm imagining like a contrast curve, to me, it's sounding a little bit more curved at the bottom now versus that linear thing. So getting rid of a little bit of the boxiness while raising the very low end at the 120. To my ears, sounds a little bit cleaner. So next I'm going to go into this range, so 500 to 2K, or at around this 1.5K mark. I noticed that the audio was sounding very harsh when I boosted it, very kind of grating to the ears, so I decided to take it down a little bit. But I noticed that if I took it down too much, it felt very kind of muffled and in the back of my ears, or like far away, kind of cave-like. I'm gonna leave it there for now, but I'll probably just do a little tweaks after that. I guess that's typically what I do is I try to find it roughly where I want it to be and then keep listening back and then do tweaks later. So now when I'm listening back to it, I think it is lacking that clarity again. So for clarity, I typically boost at around 6K, starting with 3. See how that sounds. So I'm finding that it's not actually doing all that much for me. So I'm gonna actually go to lower frequencies and I'm gonna change this to just another node. I'm gonna try boosting those and see what that sounds like. Oh, what the hell? So just switching it to this standard, this shape. I don't know what these are actually called. That was exactly what I wanted. Okay, so I'm actually pretty happy with how things are sounding. I like how it's a little bit more clearer on the top end and then the low end is a little bit cleaner. I went through each node again, just kind of going up and down, and I've found new spots for them, but most of them are pretty much the same as where they were. With this kind of boost though in the upper end, I do typically use a De-Esser as well. I just use the male S plugin, but again, listening. It's becoming very apparent as I'm doing this video. I really don't know what I'm talking about. So hopefully at least my mistakes are helpful. I just really hope it's not misinformation. If anybody wants to call me out in the comments below and just teach me, that'd be even better. But otherwise, back to the talking head. That does it for this video. Those are some of my updated thoughts on the XM8500 by Behringer. Really like this microphone. I'm going to keep it around. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments below. See you in the next one. Bye.